Most apartments today look like they were designed by the same person, for the same person in the same week. White walls, gray sofa, a monstera in the corner, prints from the internet, a space that is perfectly acceptable and completely forgettable. Afrocentric design rejects this entirely. This is a 45 SQM Afrocentric apartment. And from the moment you step inside, you know with absolute certainty that this home belongs to someone specific. Someone with a story, someone who knows exactly who they are. That feeling is what we're exploring today. The first thing you notice is not a single object or a specific color. It is the feeling of the whole, that this room has been put together with a kind of intention that goes beyond choosing what looks good together. Terracotta walls that absorb the morning light and release it slowly through the afternoon. A hand-woven rug that anchors the space with pattern and weight. Wooden furniture with the kind of grain and texture that only comes from material that has been chosen carefully rather than bought quickly. This apartment doesn't try to impress you. It simply exists completely, confidently, and on its own terms. The color palette of Afrocentric design does not come from a trend forecast or a paint company's seasonal collection. It comes from the earth itself, the terracotta of West African clay, the deep ochre of Saharan sand, the warm brown of carved ebony, the burnt sienna of laterite soil baking in the afternoon sun. These are colors that have been living alongside human beings for millennia. Colors that the eye recognizes as warm before the brain has time to analyze them. In a 45 SQM apartment, this palette does something remarkable. It makes the space feel grounded and expansive at the same time, as though the walls are breathing rather than confining. There is a fundamental difference between fabric that is manufactured and fabric that is made, and in an Afrocentric interior, that difference is visible from across the room. Kent cloth from Ghana, where each color carries a specific meaning passed down through generations. Mud cloth from Mali, hand-painted with fermented mud in patterns that tell family histories. Ankara prints in deep indigo and burnt orange, used not as wallpaper or upholstery in the conventional sense, but as art draped, framed, layered with the kind of confidence that only comes from understanding what the fabric actually means. In this apartment, the textiles are not decoration. They are documentation. In most apartments, art is something you add after the room is finished, a final layer placed over a design that is already complete. In Afrocentric interiors, art is considered from the very beginning, because it is understood that the art is not decorating the room. It is defining it. A large carved wooden mask mounted on the terracotta wall is not an accent. It is a focal point that determines where every other piece of furniture in the room is positioned. A collection of bronze sculptures on the shelf is not a styling choice. It is an assertion that this home exists within a specific cultural and artistic tradition, and that tradition is worth centering. When art is treated as architecture, the room stops being a backdrop for living. It becomes the reason for it. Afrocentric design has a relationship with natural materials that is fundamentally different from most contemporary interior movements. Where minimalism uses natural materials for their aesthetic neutrality, their ability to reseed and simplify, Afrocentric design uses them for their presence. Rattan furniture with the kind of weave that takes hours to complete. Carved wooden bowls worn smooth at the rim from years of use. Wicker baskets stacked not because they are trendy, but because they have always been the most practical and beautiful way to hold things. Terracotta pots, hand-thrown and uneven, holding plants that spill over their edges with the same organic confidence as everything else in the room. These materials do not try to look perfect. They try to look true. The most common fear people have about Afrocentric design is the pattern. The geometric print on the rug, the stripe on the cushion, the weave on the wall hanging. How do you put them together without the room becoming overwhelming? The answer, it turns out, is scale. Large bold pattern on the rug anchors the room. Medium pattern on the cushions provides rhythm. Small pattern in the textiles and objects adds detail without competing. When patterns are layered by scale rather than matched by color, the eye moves through the room comfortably, finding new things to notice without ever feeling lost. This is a skill that African textile traditions have been refining for centuries. The result is a room that feels rich rather than busy, layered rather than cluttered. The bedroom in this apartment carries the same cultural weight as every other room, but with a quieter energy. Where the living spaces are rich with pattern and art and the accumulated presence of objects that mean something, the bedroom strips back to the essentials of what rest requires. A low wooden bed frame, hand-carved with simple geometric detail. Linen bedding in deep ochre and cream that wrinkles immediately and looks better for it. A single large piece of African textile art on the wall above the bed. Not as decoration, but as the last thing seen before sleep and the first thing seen upon waking. Beside the bed, a hand-thrown terracotta lamp that casts the warmest possible light in the darkest possible way. Rest, in this room feels like it belongs somewhere. Nature in an Afrocentric interior is never treated as a styling afterthought, a plant placed in a corner because every interior design guide says you need one. It is present because in African design philosophy, the boundary between the interior and the natural world has always been more porous than Western architecture tends to allow. Large leafy plants in hand-thrown terracotta pots, dried grasses in woven vases, the curved organic forms of wooden sculpture that echo the shapes of living things. Even the furniture, with its rounded edges and natural grain, seems to be in conversation with the plants around it, as though everything in the room is part of the same continuous, living world. The Afrocentric kitchen does not announce itself with dramatic cabinetry or statement appliances. It announces itself with the smell of something cooking and the sight of tools that have clearly been chosen because they work and happen to be beautiful. Open wooden shelving holds hand-thrown ceramic bowls in earth tones alongside woven baskets that contain what the bowls cannot. The countertop is kept clear except for the things used every day. A wooden mortar and pestle worn to a polish from years of use, a terracotta oil jar, a small vase of dried flowers from the market. Every object on that counter has earned its place not through aesthetics but through use, and the kitchen is more beautiful for it. Step back and look at the whole apartment as one continuous space. 45 square meters that contain an entire cultural world, not as a museum exhibit or a themed installation, but as a home. A real, lived-in, completely personal home. Every object was chosen because it means something. Every color was chosen because it comes from somewhere. Every textile carries a history that predates the apartment, the building, and the city around it by generations. This is what Afrocentric design actually is, beneath the aesthetic. It is the radical act of making a home that tells the truth about who lives there, warmly, texturally, and without apology. In a world where most homes are designed to appeal to everyone, an Afrocentric apartment makes a different choice. It is designed to belong to someone, to reflect a specific heritage, a specific history, a specific way of understanding what warmth and beauty actually mean. The result is not a home that everyone will love. It is something rarer and more valuable than that. It is a home that one person will recognize completely and immediately as their own. If this is the kind of home you want, one that feels like it knows you, subscribe for a new apartment tour every week and tell me in the comments, which room in this apartment spoke to you most, and what would you bring into your own home first? The art, the textiles, or the earth tones on the walls?